I still see, like you're saying, I completely understand there is a market for analog for your legacy systems.
Whether it's analog or IP system in, traditional, on-prem, you put it in, that's kind of like the best it's ever going to be, unless you go round and you're doing software updates and it just gets better every single quarter that we do a release.
I really enjoy going and talking to an end user or a project manager because it opens up the question about this whole, are China watching the data? Are we streaming data back to a field full of servers in? For people to think that we are streaming data across somebody else's network, that we don't sell the network, we don't configure the network, we don't install the network, we don't design the network, we know nothing about the network, is a little bit frustrating for us as a brand, because we're always associated with, China's watching your video. We're always going to be up there under scrutiny, and we're always going to be on the pedestal for our competitors to have a pop at. And so just get used to that.
Well, as you said before, everything is moving to the cloud. Will we not see in years to come where we won't need any on-prem? And then would Hikvision not think they're a few steps behind where everyone else is already looking at cloud? Welcome to another episode of Room Secured. In this episode, we're diving into the CCTV market and we're joined by two leading voices in the industry. We've got Lewis Pinner from Verkada and Gary Harmer from Hikvision. We'll be exploring the big questions shaping the CCTV industry today. But before we begin, I'd like to say a big thank you to our episode sponsor, Hikvision, leading manufacturer of all types of CCTV, intruder, door entry, and access control systems. Let's dive straight into it. One of the first questions that I'm going to bring up in this podcast is analog and IP. Okay, and Gary, I have seen that Hikvision are still investing heavily into analog products, and Verkada, you guys haven't brought anything out analog. You guys just come out straight with IP. Is there still a big future in analog that relies on not just yourself, but I've seen other manufacturers still heavily investing into analog? Like, question why?
The answer to that, Umar, is that there is still a market for analog, and there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, there's a legacy systems out there. And so if you think about the amount of coax that's installed since the early 80s, that coax is still operational.
Correct.
And there are some scenarios, some application scenarios, where the end user can't physically swap out to an IP-based system.
I understand.
And I'll give you a classic example. If you take food retailers where the cable trays run across the actual shop floor, and that's full of coax cables, what they're saying is they can't close the store and disrupt normal operations while that cable is replaced. So the reason why analog still exists is because we can still do the technology development now over the coax, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But coming back to the cost of replacing cable, so there's the cost factor, and people want to sweat the existing assets.
Yes.
That's what we find. And the second reason is there are many applications where, like the food retailer, you've also got national heritage sites, listed buildings, where you can't go in and start drilling holes in walls and things like that. So,
but then would you not recommend the installers or the end users is, look, you've got your coax cable there, let's just add a couple of devices on each end and convert it all to IP.
Yeah.
Because then that wouldn't then be able to use like IP cameras.
Yeah.
But I still see, like you're saying, I completely understand there is a market for analog for your legacy systems. But would it come to a point where, as a manufacturer, you'll say, you know what, our sales of IP cameras are coming up here, analog is there, we're gonna knock it on the head? Or do you think we're going to see analog continue for quite some time?
I think we'll see analog continue for quite some time. It would be true to say that we've seen a gradual decline in the balance.
Yeah.
So the shift is towards IP, definitely. But analog sales are still a significant part of our revenue. Yeah. So, we have to invest and give the end user what they want, the functionality over HD, over coax.
Because then that leads me on to, with yourself, Lewis, with Verkada, you guys didn't bring out anything analog. I'm guessing you've got some devices that when you go to customers or prospects and they've say, look, we've got all these existing devices that we've only installed over the last, let's say, maybe 10 years or so ago, but they're still working fine, but we don't want to upgrade them. Can you guys take that stuff and say, right, we can convert it into...
Yes, it's probably worth me, I suppose, just rewinding a little bit.
Yeah.
So, Verkada started like 9 years ago. We weren't going to go and develop in, the coax market. Like IP is the transport method. I think if you're installing something new and you don't have a legacy environment there, we always suggest that. What we're seeing is like, IT are getting a lot more involved now in these types of projects. Like things have moved to the cloud, and actually, the minute something moves to the cloud, IT kind of need to be involved. That's kind of like our definitely our sweet spot. If someone has analog cameras in there, then yes, they can convert them to IP, and then plug them in maybe into our like cloud connector. So with Verkada, we have the ability to take in third-party cameras, but you're only really going to get the full functionality of the Verkada suite.
If
they're
use their own Verkada
modern
products.
but but we will do about 95% of the functionality on probably more traditional IP cameras, as long as they're ONVIF compliant. But ultimately, you're always going to get the best experience, running a full Verkada system end to end.
Okay. And are you seeing any new projects still be going out as analog? Because there's still one thing that it's educating installers, because as you know, there's still quite a lot of old school installers who can't get their head around IP addresses.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with laptops. They're happy plugging the camera in, having a live image at the end. Are you still seeing some of, let's say, it's probably not a good word, but the old school installers still doing new installations with analog?
Absolutely. If you go back 10, even 12, 15 years, there was a traditional security manager, who was used to running just a closed circuit TV system. Yeah. And that was all he was interested in, the security of the building, the perimeter and the inside and the entrance exit points, etc. And then along came IP, and it required a different skill set. And so what we've seen over the years is what was a massive dichotomy in the marketplace with traditional analog-based CCTV, and then the IP skill set from the younger generation who understand networks, understand licensing models, etc. That has now completely migrated, because today's security manager wears a number of hats. Yeah, they're doing facilities, they're doing, sometimes security sits under HR or facilities management, and there's a different breed of person that's responsible for security. They understand new technology. But it is true to say that there are still some installers out there who can't get their head around IP, and they will continue to run RG59 or URM70. And in Mrs. Jones' 3-bed house with a couple of cameras, one looking at the car on the front and one looking at the playing frame in the back garden, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I suppose in extreme circumstances, you will get the occasional end user that says, I don't want connectivity to the outside world.
Yeah.
So that sort of like plays into the world of analog as well.
And then that sort of leads on to another thing, is education. So educating and training installers on IP, and I think both your manufacturers have training courses. So you guys call the installers along to educate them on the products. I was looking myself just recently. There was another brand that I'm sort of like testing out at the moment. You might have heard it, a brand called Ubiquity. So I've got a number of installers who've been saying to me, "Can you try out the Ubiquity range of cameras to see, do your review and see what it's like?" And so far, it's taken me 3-4 weeks, and I'm still nowhere near closer to understanding it. In terms of, I ordered some cameras, and it's more of a closed system, so I couldn't use it on anything else. And then I thought, you know what, I'll jump onto a training course. The training course was close to £500.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. I'm guessing both your training courses are free?
So I can take it to start with. I think, Verkada, when it comes to market, one of the things that we did invest in was like this thing called the VC, Verkada Certified Engineer program. We've taken that out. We've trained, a ton of engineers kind of around the country. I think it helps if you've got a baseline like IP skill set in there. But actually, I've done the VC training myself, just in cameras. And actually, even if you can install a Ring doorbell, you can install a Verkada camera. Clearly, there's a lot more functionality and a lot more features on a Verkada camera. But ultimately, if you can do it, you can have a camera up and running in like 3 minutes once you've got your command instance set up. Like the whole idea really is like you have this almost like consumerisation of IT. And we saw that kind of happen probably 15 plus years ago with the iPhone and iPad coming out and people going, I've got this wonderful device. I want to bring that into work. I want my email on that and I want one device. I don't want to have a BlackBerry and then my own phone. And why have I got better IT when I go home than I have in the office? And I think really, with the advent of things like Ring coming out, that really kind of like disrupted the market.
I think it made a lot more people more IT literate in terms of, they scan the code and get the device on to themselves. But then some people say you make it too easy. You can't please everyone.
Yeah,
that's one problem, and it's not just in the CCTV market; it's also in the intruder alarm market as well.
Yeah.
Like for example, Hike have got the AX Pro. You guys have got intruder alarm as well, and other manufacturers. People are saying now you just scan a code and up and go. The skill set's gone.
I mean, I would argue like the skill set probably, was a closed loop, let's say, skill set, like a murky world where unless you were in it, you had to have a qualification as some form of certification there. Now you still need the certifications to go and do it. It's just maybe a bit more visible what we do. Like there's a brand behind it. I don't know. It's. I don't think it was hard before. I think we've just made it easier, but you're getting more and more functionality all the time with it. Like that's what cloud brings you, is like let's say you put a traditional, whether it's analog or IP system in, traditional on-prem, you put it in, that's kind of like the best it's ever going to be, unless you go round and you're doing software updates or, you're maybe unlocking some new features which you might have to pay for. I always kind of say like the day you kind of put a Verkada system in, it's the worst it's ever going to be. And it's still brilliant. And it just gets better every single quarter that we do a release. So I'll give you like an example. Like a year ago, we released like the natural language search, so integrating a large language model. So now I can just say, hey, show me the person wearing a red cap carrying a sports bag, and it will go out and find all of those people or vehicles as well. That didn't exist. It wasn't something that we had to then go and charge customers an additional license feature for. So there's a constant like development train kind of coming along. It's almost like your Netflix. You pay your subscription, and if your content was just the same, like
People can get bored of it, and
like your old DVD collection that you might have had in your house. You had no additional content. It would be terrible. But now, there's new releases coming out like every week, and that's kind of like what the cloud and the subscription model gives you. Is like you just get new features, new functionality, and you constantly got a chance to go and please a customer. And actually, the customer is probably even better than Netflix. It's almost like the customer now, like about 50% of our features and ideas really come from the customers feeding
Feedback.
back into us and saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could do this? And there's like Verkada one's coming up, I don't know, in like 3 weeks' time. And there's a whole new bunch of stuff coming out, which I can't talk about today. But it's just constantly the chance to go and please the customer.
Yeah, from our side, we take a layered approach to training, if that makes sense. We believe as a manufacturer, we have a duty to train, obviously, and there is a bit of a payback, because if we train the installers on how to set up and install and commission the system correctly, then it reduces the
tech support
liability further down the line. Our approach is multi-layered. So a couple of years ago, we've set up an e-learning platform. So
how's that going? Because I from the time where I like to train in person, face to face, but I think during COVID we had to move to different ways. Was that the time it's sort of
we set up a recording studio in COVID and did webinars and training seminars from a room similar to this with the traditional green background, which was really interesting. But we decided to enable on the e-learning platform non-branded type of training, so the basics of CCTV, fields of view and things like that, and people can then learn at their own pace. That's one of the advantages, rather than lose a day off the road. But we still maintain that the best training is in the classroom. So we've got 4 training academies. We have Stockley Park near Heathrow, which is head office, as you know. We have a training academy in Manchester here. We have a training academy in Dublin and one in Glasgow. And the Glasgow facility is in the process of being completely refreshed.
Is it going bigger?
Yeah, we're moving, so we're getting about 80% more space into a new building just up the road from where we are.
Out of those, which one do you find is the busiest out of all those locations?
Stockley Park.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Without a doubt. We do monthly training courses in Dublin, Manchester, etc. But Stockley is busy. We run training courses probably 3 days a week at least, sometimes 4 days a week.
Guessing you have a dedicated training.
We have a dedicated trainer.
Yeah.
What we do is we actually set up in a classroom environment and teach them the basics of the structure of Hikvision. Yeah, so menu configuration and device setup configuration and the basics. That's called an HCSA course, and then we do a more advanced course, the HCSP course. And then over the last 4 years, we've developed modular training courses, because with the breadth of product that we have on the portfolio, we found it really difficult to cover all of the products. Even on the 3-day advanced course, it was very difficult to cover all the product ranges. So based on user feedback, it was like, I don't really need to sit across the 3-day advanced course, because all I want is to understand the ANPR setup of configuration. And that's only like a 2-hour session in the 3 days. So what we started to do was to produce modular courses. So you can come on a course for Hike Central, you can do a separate course for AX Pro, non-video, and that has kept the training department really busy, not only in terms of fitting into the calendar all of the courses, but writing the content for the separate courses as well. So it's a full-time job.
CCTV predominantly, now even the name, I think the name needs to be changed, because CCTV is closed circuit TV, which was the case 25 years ago, where the stuff wasn't connected onto a network. It was literally, cameras, quad multiplexer, VCR. There was no network connectivity. We then moved on to the times when we then had DVR. and then NVR, and now we're moving into different kinds of storage as well.
Yeah.
So, for example, we've got an on-prem recorder, traditional Hikvision, stick a recorder in, cameras go onto that. You then have the option of edge recording, which is having storage locally in the cameras. So sometimes you don't even need an NVR.
Yeah.
And now we're slowly looking at adopting cloud as well. From manufacturer point of view, and I know, Lewis, with Verkada, you guys don't do any physical on-prem recorders, but with Hikvision, are you seeing still people just traditional on-prem kind of installations, or are you getting asked more and more, can we do a bit of a mix of hybrid or even cloud as well?
I think from our experience, the large majority of installations that are using Hikvision equipment is on-prem,
Okay.
using a recorder.
Yeah.
If I take the first point about recording at the edge with an SD card, I don't think there are many end users that are doing that and relying solely on the SD card. They would
More of a
use
fail-safe
that as a backup. Okay, so if the network drops, you're still recording at the edge on the camera, and then when the network comes back up again, you do a dynamic network recovery. So you pull back into the central recorder from the SD card to complete your coverage on the central recorder. And I think there are some applications where that's absolutely the right thing to do. In critical applications, you don't want to lose recording if a network fails, if a switch fails, or something of that ilk.
Yeah, I think we have a different philosophy on that. So a network's probably one of the most reliable things. So a wired network, you're running on 5 nines reliability on an IP network these days minimum. I think recording on the edge, with flash storage and what you've got now, you have the ability to record a year's worth of footage at the edge in a fully encrypted, manner. So everything's, nothing. You can't take the card out and go and use it somewhere else. So that's completely secure, and actually, it's much kinder to the network, not running. If it's 4K or whatever your 8
Traffic
gig,
over the network.
running that traffic over the network. So all the recording's done there. Your metadata is just going back to kind of like the cloud.
Yeah.
And you can do cloud backup, in there if that's what you choose to do. So you've got a second source of that data, or if you're archiving and you want to, keep stuff for 10 years. If you want to do that, you can do that within the cloud very simply by the click of a button. But if you're a CIO or a network manager, you don't necessarily want that flowing over your network unless you've set up, quality of service on the network. And the last thing you want is to transverse that over a wide area network, because they're still really expensive.
Yeah,
That's your expensive part. So actually, like the people that we speak to, customers, the minute IT get involved, they're like, oh, we love this. Because it's at the edge, the power's there, you've got the recording. If I need a backup, I can have that in the cloud, and you're just sending the equivalent of an email across the network per camera.
Are you finding it's easier inwards with your products to go in through via the IT way, or just for example, traditional security way?
Yeah.
Have you got different angles that you
Nowadays you
can penetrate?
have to include IT in virtually every deployment.
It's multi-level selling, right? All day, every day. So it's a different message. I think whenever we meet a security manager, that's kind of where you get there. Oh my God, this is amazing. Wow. And everything's kind of integrated out of the box. So if it's not just cameras, you're talking like access controls, sensors, guest software, even like 4G gateways, etc. But it's really the minute it goes onto a network, any kind of IT leader that's worth their salt wants to know exactly what's going on to their network.
Yeah.
They want to know what's plugging in, who's the vendor, is there risk associated with that, and then where's my data being processed as well.
That's a very good point that you just brought up, because when I speak to many people about cloud recording, and also not just cloud recording, is the point-to-point when they're viewing their images on a phone and it goes via a Hike server or another manufacturer's servers. Some people have this thing in their mind that Hikvision are viewing my cameras, and that could also lead on to cloud, because the recording isn't being done on a traditional recorder where they can physically see that the hard drive is there. People think, someone else has access to that recording.
It's still on a physical recorder, but the recorder's on the camera, right? So your recording is still there. Or, if you're viewing it live, you're just viewing it on the camera.
Yeah.
If you've archived it, it sits in a cloud, but everything's like anomalized. I mean, I would argue AWS or whoever these, your cloud vendor is.
Yeah.
With us, it's AWS. They've got more cybersecurity people and more privacy people than most companies can shake a stick
100%.
at. So
100%.
I would be more comfortable that my stuff was there rather than, in a IT room or,
Which
an
people
intern.
anyone has access into or could get access into.
Yeah, or an IT data center. And, even still today, a little tongue-in-cheek thing is always, is if you've got an MVR or DVR as your password and logins, it's still admin and password. And you get the odd chuckle on a call. Or it's written on the server, which, as an IT director's nightmare.
A system's only ever going to be as resilient as the end user and the installer wants to make it. And that's a point that's often lost in discussions. For me, I really enjoy going and talking to an end user or a project manager somewhere or even a consultant. But I always like the IT guy to be in the room.
Yeah.
Because it opens up the question about this whole, are China watching the data? Are we streaming data back to a field full of servers in the middle of China somewhere? The answer to that is no. Yeah. So unequivocally, there has never been any credible evidence presented by anybody, government or otherwise, to say, here is actual evidence of your product trying to send data to a Chinese IP address. That's never happened, and that's why we call it out on a regular basis. But the other main point in the discussion is, I always say and address the IT person in the room to say, do you believe that you're running a robust, secure, resilient network? Now, invariably, they're not going to say no, right? They're always going to say yes. And that plays into the message that we try and deliver all the time.
Because you could probably find vulnerabilities in their network.
Exactly. But our camera is an end device, no different to a printer. Yeah. And so for people to think that we are streaming data across somebody else's network, that we don't sell the network, we don't configure the network, we don't install the network, we don't design the network, we know nothing about the network, is a little bit frustrating for us as a brand, because we're always associated with, China's watching your video. And that's one of the most misconceived points about our brand, I think. So I always enjoy the relationship and the engagement with the IT people in the room, because they're never going to say to you, we're running an unsecure network.
I think it's definitely a challenge. I know I worked for a big US bank, and we made a point of not having, or certainly the US government as well, made a whole point of not having any Huawei equipment within that environment. So I feel your pain.
And there are times when you can accept an end user's view to say they're not going to run this brand or that brand for whatever reasons they may have. But for those views to be made on misconceptions and misunderstandings and a lack of understanding about the technology, if you take some end users who have read articles in the press about the brand, most of which is complete fabrication, I really enjoy the opportunity to get in front of that end user and say, listen, if you don't want to use our brand, we're fine with that, but please make the decision on an informed basis. So understand the facts around it, and then make your decision accordingly. And if they choose not to use us, having listened to our cyber credentials and our encryption and the fact that we don't use default usernames and passwords and a whole plethora of other things that we have to cover off, then I'm happy for them to make that decision, but make an informed decision.
Just a quick reminder that today's episode is sponsored by Hikvision, the global leader in security solutions.
You just touched on one point which I want to expand a bit more on, and that was the Huawei not being allowed to be used in the US, because that brings us on to the whole NDAA scenario, which Gary, I know Hikvision have been firefighting for quite a long time. NDAA is more an American thing, which personally I think has no relevance here in the UK. And it's a number of companies which are on the banned list, which they don't allow to be used in American government or places like that.
So it's federal government, US federal government.
US federal
only.
government only.
So it doesn't apply to local states or local government in
So
the
it's
states.
okay. So it's
federal
only federal.
government sites only, or sites that are funded by US federal government money. So if you take an example of that, does it apply in the UK? No, it doesn't. Would it apply on a US Air Force base in the UK? Yes, it would, because it would be funded by US federal government money. So the Hikvision brand wouldn't be permitted to be installed on a US Air Force base here. But other than that, unless it's funded by federal government money, there's no restriction. And we find it, again, a bit disappointing that some manufacturers who are our competitors would sort of like not really play the true cards.
Yeah.
It's like, we've got NDAA compliant product. Is that relevant here? It's sort of like, I think it's a bit misleading.
Yeah.
But the activities of some of our competitors are what they are.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not something I come across. I've got an EMEA
It's
role.
interesting.
An EMEA
Okay.
role. I've never been challenged with it. But I know we have a large federal sales team. We've gone through a whole bunch of accreditation so that we can sell into the federal government, and we're having some pretty good success in there at the minute. But from a UK or a EMEA perspective, never been asked
That's
about
quite
it.
interesting, because I've seen, I've spoken to a lot of people who said they've been told to take out Hikvision products. And when I say, what kind of a business is it? Oh, it's like, it's just a factory. I said, is it it's not even American owned. They've just, people, like you said, in the press, they've seen, all this whole speculation, NDAA, all this stuff, and they're being told to rip all the products out and install it. Now, here's the other thing. Sometimes they say we install it with another brand. They don't want another Chinese-made brand. They want like a European one. But then I turn around and say to them, well, what are the devices all connected to? What router is connected to? Where's that made? It's made in China. Your Apple iPhone, where's it made? It's made in China. I think the whole education of this NDAA, people don't understand it at all, really.
Yeah, I find it quite amusing that I go to trade shows in the UK and I come across manufacturers' stand, NDAA compliant banners on their stand, and you go and talk to one of their salespeople and say, what's the NDAA?
They don't know.
And they don't even know what that NDAA actually means.
Yeah.
And so for the benefit of the podcast, it's the National Defence Authorization Act, which is an American piece of legislation, purely and simply for federal government.
Yeah.
That's it.
What made you think it brought it over here into the UK then? Is it just because, like you said, federal owned, like the Air Force bases or something like that? Or what stemmed it to bring news over here?
I think if you go back to circa 2017, 2018, when the trade war between China and the US really kicked off, that's where it stems from. And as I say, if I say to our sales team sometimes, we're global market leader, we're Chinese tech brand, we manufacture some technologies that are in the headlines, such as facial recognition, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a while. we're always going to be up there under scrutiny. Yeah, and we're always going to be on the pedestal for our competitors to have a pop at. And so just get used to that. It's part of our life. But we just need to educate. It's all about education, educating our own sales teams to know how to respond, educating the installers to know how to respond, and educating end users. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to take part in this podcast, because hopefully a few end users will look at this and say, I didn't know that. And so for me, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we don't actually manufacture in China. We manufacture outside of China. You know, I think like with any competition, certainly, you know, we have people say, oh, you know, we don't like cloud, and it's like, okay, that's interesting. You know, your IT department loves cloud. You know, everyone loves cloud in their own lives. You know, Netflix, Spotify, you know, your
they all
iPhone.
use cloud.
100% they do.
Exactly.
So I love it when people say, oh, you know, we don't use cloud, we don't like cloud.
Yeah, so coming back to this misconception about the brand, we've made a conscious decision not to offer any form of cloud storage facilities in the UK and Ireland region. We don't offer it. Yeah.
Why's that?
Well, because we're playing into the playbook. So for quite a few years, we've been saying we don't offer cloud storage. Yeah, your data, your video data, your audio data is your data. It's secured on your own network. How you choose to manage your data is down to you. We don't have access to it. One of our key messages is Hikvision does not have access to end user video. Yeah, it's encrypted. It's normally kept on premises, on a secure network, and we don't have any access to it.
So if someone does have a cloud like video strategy, do they then have to go and buy
They go through
additional
AWS or
cloud storage on top of the solution?
They just go to a third-party managed service like AWS.
But your stuff integrates with...
So here's the thing. So Hike Connect. So when Mrs. Jones wants to look at the camera on her mobile phone, all we're doing is enabling the pipe, opening up the pipe. So on AWS in Dublin, we have some space where that person's account credentials are stored. So she opens up a mobile phone and says, I want to see the video. That goes to the credentials on the AWS server that says, right, I now need to connect to the NVR sitting on this IP address at this location. And all we do is open up the pipe.
Right.
The video itself isn't stored in the cloud. It's actually pulled from the NVR in Mrs. Jones's domestic residence and streamed through to her mobile phone. We don't have access to it at all. The only thing that we're doing is enabling the opening of the transmission.
But would you not, like, the future, will we see the future as cloud recording? You know, I know Verkada have sort of like, you got a hybrid model at the moment, but as you said before, everything is moving to the cloud. Will we not see in years to come where we won't need any on-prem? And then would Hikvision not think they're a few steps behind where everyone else is already looking at cloud? Like, I'll give you an example. You go and buy a DIY doorbell. You buy a Ring doorbell, buy a EasyViz doorbell, Reolink, any of them. It gives the option to have cloud recording from the doorbell. Do you not see that there's a bit of a future?
I think there's space for both scenarios. I think that there are organizations that are IT savvy where they understand the cloud and they see the benefit of storage in the cloud. 100%. There's also the same amount of organizations where they're saying, this is our data. We want to control our data. We want to know where it is all the time. We don't want even to think about the possibility of somebody getting to our data. Therefore, the data is going to stay on our own closed network. Some of the big retailers have that. They do have that mindset. You know, for GDPR and data privacy and breaches and everything else, they don't want to let their data out of their out of their
But from an IT
domains.
perspective, they are all moving to the cloud.
Yeah.
Right. That's the reality. I think, you know, the hybrid model, recording on premise, having a backup in the cloud is kind of the way to do it. It's the, you know, from a cost perspective, from a network traffic perspective. I think also as well, it's like not having a piecemeal approach. So you haven't got to cobble it all together. With Verkada, like all of your cloud costs are included if you're archiving your stuff out there. If you want to do additional cloud backup, we offer, you know, packages around that as well, but it's all included. So if you decide to archive, like, you know, all of your footage over that 10-year period, that's on our dime, right? There's no additional cost for that. So there's no additional like risk or cost for the customer. As I say, data's encrypted and anomalized anyway. So, I mean, you've got to be doing something pretty amazing to get hold of that out of AWS.
You just mentioned cost there. And now we're seeing a lot more within the industry of things moving to licenses, which we didn't really used to see back in the early days. Do you see that we're going to see more and more things moving to license as a revenue earner for the manufacturers?
It's just a different way of doing things. I mean, it's like if you look at a camera today compared to probably a camera 10 years ago, there's a lot more technology because there's a lot more edge processing and stuff that goes on in that camera. You know, do we make tons of money out of those cameras? Probably not, right? Ultimately, you want to do you want to sell the subscription because actually it's a subscription to innovation. You know, you're putting that camera system in, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that's as good as it ever, you know, was ever going to be. Now it's like, you know, we offer this 10-year warranty on everything anyway, so on all the cameras, apart from the PTZ. And effectively, that just gets better and better like every quarter that we ship. You know, new features and functionality. So the subscription model actually, I think, protects the customer, right? They have the ability, it gives them all the support, and it's actually very good value for money. If you consider like a camera may ship with, I don't know, a traditional camera might ship with 1 year, 3 year or 5 year warranty if you're lucky.
Yeah.
This now shipping with a 10-year warranty, you know it's going to work for a minimum of 10 years. Like we've still got cameras that we ship from day one. They're still working, still got the features and functionality that, you know, we know, love and expect with Verkada. So I actually think the subscription model, we've got it in our lives now, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
But actually your lives are a lot more richer for it. I'm not going down to, you know, Blockbuster Video on a Friday night and spending £5 and then, you know, probably another £10 on ice cream and drinks.
You're aging us too badly.
I know.
Blockbuster Video.
But the reality is now, like,
You'll be talking about Woolworths next.
yeah, but like for £10 a month now, I've got, you know, the ability to kind of watch as much content as I want.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the same, I think, in the video market. Like, not everybody's going to use every single feature.
Yeah.
But you've got customers that, and it might be that they just like the ability to kind of, you know, search on whether it's, you know, faces, what people are wearing, just like that whole kind of like simplicity. But it just gets better all the time. And I'd much rather have a system that got better, that I've got a subscription model for. And actually, if you look at it over a total cost of ownership, it doesn't actually cost the customer any more money.
Yeah.
I actually think it makes it cheaper for them, especially if you have to do things like refreshes of like MVRs and DVRs as well.
Yeah, so the quarterly update that you guys operate, that's basically an auto update basis. Whereas our model is you choose to do a firmware update and get the latest, you know, feature set from this version. And so we sell a base license.
But it's in the cloud already, so it's like it's there, it's working. And if you kind of choose to use the features and functionality, it's just there.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to update it. Obviously, there's firmware for cameras, but really all the features and functionality is just there. It's an application now.
Yeah.
That's all security is.
So for our model, we want the end user and the installer to make a conscious decision to connect to a server somewhere and bring in the latest version of that for vulnerability patching or features and benefit updates.
What if they don't update and there's a security vulnerability out there? Because you get these like 0-day attacks within cyber, and if, I don't know, let's just say that you've identified a vulnerability and that person hasn't updated in a that year, let's just say, they're just sat there vulnerable.
Yeah. So you would hope and want them to be on a secure network so that they're not really susceptible to the vulnerability in the first place. But what we would do so we've recently issued some notifications on vulnerabilities. We work with the white hat hackers who have told us about the vulnerabilities. Okay. So there's a whole process in Hikvision. We have a research centre where you can report a vulnerability and then we'll investigate it, work with the person that's reported it, produce the fix, and again, work with the person that's reported the vulnerability so that we work with them to test the fix, if that makes sense. And then we agree a go-live date with them. So we don't like 0-day vulnerabilities. We like to say there's a vulnerability, the fix is here, click here to get to the patch effectively.
So the challenge with that is if it's been exploited in that world, that whole world kind of know about it and know the exploit.
Yeah, but we don't find that to be the case. Most of the vulnerabilities are discovered by white hat hackers, and so they work collaboratively with us to make sure that nobody in their right mind is going to put out, here's an exploit. This is how to get into a Hikvision device. That's just irresponsible, and it doesn't. We don't find that happens. The issue is when you announce a vulnerability and you don't have the fix. That's when you're opening up risk, and so we want to mitigate risk by having the fix available on the day that we announce. That's in our opinion the more responsible
and
way.
Has
to handle
Hikvision
it.
have a similar kind of licensing with some of their products, or is it just on like the VMS softwares?
Yeah, so when you buy a camera, you buy a camera.
Yeah.
Most of our product comes with 5-year warranty now. You buy a camera and you can choose to do firmware updates, or you can choose not to, depending on your view on connectivity. The key message there is there's no auto update.
Right.
When you turn on your laptop and it says there's a Windows update and I'm going to do it, it only does that because it connects to a server automatically and says, oh, right, this device isn't running the latest suite, so we'll offer or force an update. We can't do that because our whole messaging is around we don't know where our devices are and we don't suck out video. They're not connecting automatically to any of our servers anywhere. So if a device is left unpatched, then we don't have visibility of that. It's down to the owner of the system and the maintenance provider, which is a potential revenue stream, to offer those services. So we believe that a no auto update model is the most secure.
Yeah.
Because we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't.
Yeah.
So if we did an auto update, that would mean that we've got connectivity to your device, which people don't like. And then by the same token, it's like, well, it should have auto updated. Well, if you can't have both. Do you know what I mean? It's a conflict in interest. So the cameras come unlicensed, effectively. The VMS is licensed. So Hike Central, you buy a base license, which gives you core functionality, and then we do modular licenses depending on whether you want to do ANPR, access control, time and attendance. So it can grow with the user as their requirements grow.
Right.
Yeah. And that base license, you can install version 3 of Hike Central today, and it will come with what we call a SUP, software update program. And so for a period of 3 years, you get all the new features and benefits, and you can just download the latest versions for a period of 3 years. After that, if you want to get the latest version, then you buy a SUP renewal license, a software upgrade program renewal license, which is done on a chargeable basis. And then that gives you then the ability to continue to get the latest features and benefits on a download, give me the latest version.
We're a bit more, I'd say, a little bit simpler because there's no hardware on-prem, apart from your camera or your door if it's like access control. So it's really simple. You have a camera, you buy a license. You have a door, you buy a license, and that's it. And you get everything.
So each product that you purchase, you put. What happens? Question: someone's got all the system, and there's a fallout between somewhere along the line, and say, right, we're not paying that license anymore. Does people still have access? Like, do they have access to a certain point, or does the recording stop, or is that product just become like a heavyweight?
No, so look, I haven't experienced a customer not loving Verkada yet, right? We got to do something pretty spectacular, I think, for a customer to kind of fall out of us. Like, we put the customer front and center. I think we always impress the customer. So I think it's like anything. The device, so, let's take a camera for argument's sake. A camera will record. We will give you, just say your license runs out, you get your 30-day grace period. It's like, hey, you need to renew your license, and then the customer renews it. That's kind of like our license model. But I haven't experienced yet a customer that wants to take it out.
Right.
We're 9 years as a customer, as a company, like running, 8 years of that kind of like shipping product. And really, once customers have it in, it's like this fire and forget technology, really.
Yeah.
They just love it.
You will get the occasional individual. So, having worked in distribution for a long time before I joined Hikvision, and selling VMS licenses of various different brands, occasionally you'll get an end user where there's a change of senior people, and all of a sudden they're presented with the annual license cost, and I go, why are we doing that? They feel as if they're being held to ransom a little bit, and but then it's a question of going back in and re-educating, and you have to resell the system again.
And this was your world that you existed in before. These are the reasons why you made it. But like with certainly with our licensing, it's very rare a customer buys a 1-year license. Like, most of our customers buy either a 5 or a 10-year license. So, you buy a 10-year license, you've got a 10-year warranty, and you just forget about it. It just works, and it just impresses you all the time. And every quarter, you get a bit more amazed because there's something more amazing to go in there. And like, the beauty of it is like about 70% of our customers start with cameras, and then they go, oh, we love this. God, we got to do something with access control. Let's go and have a look at these guys. And really, like, we're not a camera company. We're a security company. We're a platform now.
You've just, I like it because you're touching onto the topics that I'm going to move on to.
Okay.
Because that moves on to, again, now, let's go back. I keep referring to the past where a CCTV company would only make cameras. Okay. Gary, you've seen many companies throughout your time, let's say like Vista, Baxall, Panasonic, and all the older names who would traditionally just make CCTV products. What we're seeing now across manufacturers is a full ecosystem. So they're not limited now to just cameras, as both your brands are. You've got access control, you've got intruder alarms, door entry intercom systems. What do you think made the change that the brands thought, you know what, we need to get that customer, and we need to brick wall them in effect and keep them within our ecosystem?
I think if you have an ecosystem, so look, if I sort of almost like backtrack, if you look at like the industry and just say like each of those systems was a disparate system previously. If you wanted to integrate them, you had to spend money to go and integrate them. And let's just say you update the firmware on one, and it
doesn't work.
Knock something else out, which you hear daily.
And it breaks, and it's like this constant like maintenance. It's great if that's like your job and that's all you're doing is just doing all that integration. But actually just integrating something out of the box. And if you look at like the ecosystem of like Apple, right? You buy your iPhone, you pay a little bit more for it, but it works. It's very, user friendly. And then, they release like the AirPods, and you're like, I'm not paying £200 for a set of AirPods. next week you've got them in,
Yeah,
and they just work. Or you do what I did. I bought a cheap pair to start with. I'm like,
And you thought this is
there's no way
waste
I'm
of money.
paying.
Buy cheap, buy twice. That's what.
And I did, and and like my AirPods are always in my pocket. They're always in, and they just work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think like with these like ecosystems, whether it's like all your stuff, and it just works. That's fantastic, right? And that's plus also, we want to grow as a company. Like, I imagine everyone wants to get a bit more revenue. You want to take, more kind of, I suppose, impress the customers more, so they spend more money with you. But then there's also, I think, like you have like these like alliances or programs where, like we've got a bunch of integrations now with, some other security applications and companies as well. So like the system opens up a bit more. And I think, again, you see that with Apple, with like the App Store. It's been
There's so many
incredibly
different-
successful.
Yeah, of course.
So that's definitely where I see kind of like, the Verkada platform being. Like we will continue to release, hopefully a new product like every year. And that's based on what our customers are asking us to look at. We may do some acquisitions in the future, and there'll be continual integrations.
Yeah, for us, the question of interoperability is always a key one. But more importantly, I think it's the user experience. Gone are the days where a control room can afford to have a CCTV system, an access control system, a door intercom system, a time and attendance system, all running completely independently of each other, which is completely inefficient. And they don't have the spare resources to go around and manage that now. So the message very clearly from the end user is, I want to do everything.
Yeah.
I want it all under one umbrella, which is why we call our product Hike Central, because it's the central platform that brings all of our devices together into one easy to use user interface. We don't do everything. We do a lot, but we don't do everything. So we have a technology partner program. We've got a couple of hundred other manufacturers who, at various levels, if you take Milestone, for example, we are an integration partner to Milestone.
Yeah.
So, our cameras can be deployed quite successfully on their platforms. And we have a technology partner manager for the UK and Ireland who looks at those relationships and develops those relationships. And globally, that partnership, works as well for us. So we take the approach that we need to make it as easy as we can for the end user to have efficiency within their organisation. More importantly nowadays, it's about collecting that information to a central point, to be able to produce real-time business intelligence, management information to the end user so that, we're still doing the traditional security through the camera, but we're also providing an added value. So, for example, doing people counting, queue management, slips, trips and falls analysis, a whole plethora of things that is possible to be done through the use of video or access control or whatever. But if you bring those data sets together into a central place, you can get 2 + 2 = 5. You can produce a lot of meaningful real-time information. And that opens up the opportunity then to talk to other budget holders.
Yeah.
So you're not talking to a security department. You're talking to the security department and getting them to collaborate with the marketing teams and the branding teams, and the health and safety team to say, this is what is possible through the use of these devices. All put some money in and we can go and get this. And that's the message. But it's a different type of sale.
I think that there's that, and then there's also like the big financial message. Like you just talked through like all of these disparate systems. Like in a traditional world, they'd have all had servers that need to be, fed and watered like every whether it's every month from a patch update, but generally you're going to update your servers might be 3 years, might be 5 years. Plus they all need network connectivity. There's cost associated with that. The network needs to be refreshed, and then you've got all of the the software applications that run on them, and they need to be patched, maintained, etc. In the world of cloud, that stuff all goes in the bin. You don't need any of that stuff anymore. So those messy kind of like data cupboards or service, cupboards, that goes away. And all of a sudden now that just sits in the cloud and all your intelligence is there and it just gets better and it's easier.
That brings on now one of the buzzwords that everyone's talking about, AI. Okay. And a camera is no longer just a security camera to pick up thieves or shoplifters or things like that. You can do a lot more with the security camera with the help of AI now as well, can't you?
Yeah.
Because I know in both platforms, you've got something like heat mapping. So you can see where customers are walking to in an aisle. You can see the busiest times of the day when customers have come in.
Yeah.
And then you can narrow it down to more things like you said, the smart search. So let's say previously, if the police came and says, right, we're looking for someone who was wearing a grey jumper with blue jeans, you'd have to trail through lots of footage.
Hours and hours.
Hours and hours. Now you can simply just type it in.
Yeah, and I think look, there's a ton of things in there. So I mean, there's like AI search, there's line crossing, like as you say, like heat maps. I mean, there's tons and tons of things you can do, and depending on the industry, will depend on like the use case and how they use AI there. But I think what I love about AI and kind of what we're doing in there is like the traditional kind of like security team now setting up kind of like all the alerts now that you can do with it, and they're pretty accurate these days, and having the ability to make all of those people like a lot more productive in what they do and more efficient. So if you're in let's say a retail store and they've got 16 cameras and they're just looking at them, the reality is they're not going to be able to watch 16 cameras. But if you've got some great alerting to kind of set up now, whether that's like person of interest, line crossing, loitering, crowding, whatever that may be.
No sale being rung up on a till or whatever
Absolutely.
it is.
Refunds, with only one. With no.
What you're doing nowadays is providing the exceptions that you decide. What are the exceptions to the norm? And then highlighting those as an exception, which makes your whole operation far more efficient, far more responsive. And actually, it's about improving the customer journey and the customer experience in the store. So the retailers will pay money for technology that helps them improve their customer journey experience. So the fact that you're going to trigger, if you've got more than 3 people in a queue for more than a minute, and you can go and trigger an alert to the store manager to say go and open up another till, that is real benefit of the use of AI. Real benefit, not just in a traditional security focus. It's a tangible benefit that you can actually monetize.
You're actually protecting a brand, right? And if you can, whether it's like the mobile app that you use, or you've got the alerting set up, and it might be tables haven't been cleared, or the front of house isn't presented in the way that you want, and you're just taking a screen scrape maybe like every half an hour. But ultimately, you want to provide a fantastic experience, and actually the technology that we sell allows you to go and have that fantastic experience.
And we've done projects with retailers where they put a camera on the shop front and they measure the number of people walking by and how many of those people are actually going in to the store. So they would do a window display A, and they'll run that for a period of time. And you can say, well, you've got a busy day, but if you run it over a longer period of time, that trial, you'll get a balanced view to say, for every 1,000 people that walked past the store, so many people went in. And then we changed the window display to window display B, and we saw the impact, whether that was better than A or worse than A. And that, again, is worth money, because they will be able to tell you for every person that walks in the store, there's an average spend of and a dwell time of. And so if you can get people in the store in the first place, you're going to increase your revenue. And so bringing to life data is a key part of selling systems
it's just
nowadays.
Opened up the security thing to a whole new world.
It's understanding, I suppose, like how people are measured at their, what they do, whether it's that person like within retail or whether it's someone within health and safety, how many kind of like accidents they're having, understanding like how they're measured, what success looks like for them as a customer, how that customer makes money, and then look to see how our technology can help them either, reduce the amount of accidents, reduce shoplifting, make more money.
The two brands are no different in that regard. It is about
Facial recognition.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen in the news, the Met Police have deployed facial recognition cameras to pick up people of interest.
Yep.
And there's people who are for it, and there's people who are against it. It's more people saying, where is their images held? So I know both manufacturers, you guys have facial recognition devices. My question then is, if my image is taken and it's used to open up a door or be picked up on another device, where is my data held? Is it locally on the device? Is it held up in the cloud? Is it GDPR compliant? Because that's another thing that we've got to be careful of with holding data is the GDPR thing.
Yeah. So I'll start with some general comments about the use of facial recognition technology. The technology has been around for quite some time. I think, as a general comment, we've done a bad job in terms of explaining the technology. So if you go to the high street and say to your average member of the public, are you happy for your face to be captured, kept and stored on a server for an unlimited period of time for no justifiable reason whatsoever?
Everyone's going to say no.
Everybody's going to say no.
Correct.
Okay? If you go to that person and say, we're doing a facial recognition system in this high street today, your face is going to be captured, and if you're not a person of interest, it's immediately deleted, it's not stored anywhere, and it's not retained, they won't have a problem with it. And the people that have got a problem with it are the people that don't want to be found.
Yes.
Yeah. But your average member of the public will have no issue with that at all. But we didn't do a good enough job in explaining how the technology works and how it was going to be managed. And if you look at all of the trials, the public case trials that have been very well documented and reported on, the issue has been about the management of the system, not about the technology itself.
Correct.
But people have demonized the technology as a result of that. So facial recognition is now, feared, but it shouldn't be feared because it can be used for so many good cases. Technology for good. We use the expression technology for good. So it is about finding very quickly the lost child in a shopping centre.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas, in years gone by, you would have to say, I've now got to go through all this video footage for the last hour since my child went missing to see if I can spot them somewhere. Now, Mrs. Jones has invariably got a picture of that child on her phone. We can quickly get that into the database
and start
say,
searching.
Show me
minutes.
where this person is, where they've been, and ping, 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 thumbnails immediately enable you to find the current or the last known location of that person. People want that technology.
Yeah.
Technology for good.
I think that probably people looked at the film Minority Report years and years ago, and it was like, right, everybody's there, we're identifying everybody.
Yeah.
We're not at all. It's actually like you're matching faces at the end of the day. And it's your point around person of interest. If you've been made a person of interest, right, it generally means you've been caught doing something
wrong.
And there will be notes along with that. That data is stored locally on a camera, and it's fully encrypted, right? You're not storing everybody's face on there as well. So, and then, to the point, actually, there is got quite a good use case with a hotel group where actually they're looking, they've deployed our technology, and now, it's integrated so that if that, high net worth person comes in, they know that when they come in, they like this whiskey and they like to read this paper. And so that when they come in, they get recognised. It's always nice to, feel special. Oh, we've got your favourite whiskey and we've got your newspaper ready. So it's not always a negative. There's so many positive use cases for it. But I think it was in the BBC 2 days ago. So Sainsbury's are going on a a trial, I think in like
Facial recognition
14
trial.
stores,
Yeah.
facial recognition. I mean, like, you've only got to read like the newspaper like every day. Like, retail has just been hit really hard. They've got
Correct.
so many things, whether it's like national insurance, whether it's like rates, and then, you know, the whole thing around whether it's organised crime or just, you know, your opportunist kind of like shoplifter. It's having a knock-on effect on everybody. Like,
Yeah.
food prices are going up. So actually, anything we, you know, personal view here, anything we can do to kind of, you know, help it so that it helps the overall public, makes the world kind of like it's a big statement, but makes the world a safer place, and kind of keeps, you know, the people that you want to be shopping around you shopping there. And it's also good for the retailer because they've not got these huge amounts of money just going out of the store on a daily basis. So I'm all for it, but I know it's all used in the right way, and we're all like GDPR compliant as well.
There needs to be governance around the use of
Correct.
facial recognition.
Yeah,
It needs
yeah.
to be proportionate.
Yeah.
It needs to be managed well. You need clear policies on how you're going to operate the system, whether you're going to retain people's faces, how long you're going to retain them for, why you're retaining the face. So, you need an impact assessment effectively on the use of the technology in the first place. And you need corporate governance and corporate ownership on the use of the technology.
I think
And
you
if you
correct
don't
there.
have that, we're never going to overcome the problem of people being afraid of the technology.
Yeah, but like with you know, the advent of kind of like security really becoming more like an application, you have like role-based access control. So your IT department can't see what is being recorded. Like, all they can do is say, right, it's got this IP address and it's working, let's say, and they might be able to grant access if their access allows them to grant other people access. Your store manager may be the only person that you say can actually make someone a person of interest. So it's different roles for different people. It's not like the Wild West where, you know, you want to see if your girlfriend's coming into the shop. It's just, putting that governance behind it all.
It's interesting because there was one article where a lady had shopped in a supermarket. I won't mention the name of the supermarket. And she'd been flagged up as a shoplifter. And then when she went into another store of the same supermarket, they said, sorry, you can't come in, you're a shoplifter. And what it transpired, by the time they did their investigation, it was a staff member had wrongly flagged her up through facial recognition that she's a shoplifter. So it's like what you're saying, it's the training and the governance of it. It needs to be used in the correct way.
100% correct. But equally as important is that when somebody says I've been flagged incorrectly, there needs to be policies in place where somebody is going to quickly investigate that and take a corrective action. And it's unfortunate for the person that got wrongly accused of being a shoplifter, but hopefully the incidence of that occurring is very, very few compared to the good that is done from the use of the technology. So don't demonize the technology because of one or two, very unfortunate cases that shouldn't have happened. But the important message is have a process in place to deal with those situations.
Yeah. Gary, I've got a question that I would like to put directly to yourself.
Oh, sounds ominous.
And this is related to the recent cancellation of distributorship with COP.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask, because we're on a podcast, is what happened there, and can you shine any light onto that?
I can give you some comment, and I'm not in a position to say too much, other than the fact that it's always regrettable when a business relationship comes to an end for whatever reason. We made a public statement as to the reasons why we terminated the distribution agreement with COP, and they were basically ones of strategic alignment and finance. I think the real shame here is that when the relationship came to an end, there were a lot of people potentially displaced.
Correct.
From
I think nearly 50, 60 staff members there.
Yeah. And many of those people I've worked with in previous companies, they've been a direct colleague of mine, and a huge amount of them, I've worked with them, because they've worked for other brands that I've sold. And so it's always a shame to see that situation has occurred. So that's the regrettable part of that. But it's good to see that those people have been snapped up already in the industry, and the very, very large majority of them have already found suitable alternative positions, which is great to see. And personally, I wish them all the best in their new careers that they've now managed to go and forge for themselves. That's all I can say at the present time. It is what it is. I think the important part of the message is that we're not walking away from any of our manufacturer liabilities from a product that they've sold.
Under warranties and things like that. Yeah.
If an installer has bought a product from COP, a Hikvision product, and it's under warranty and there's an issue, we have a whole range of our other tier 1 distributors that have offered to manage the warranty services for us. So, if you look on our LinkedIn post, for example, you'll see that we've made that statement already. We won't walk away from any of our responsibilities as a result of us terminating the agreement.
Okay. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for your time, for joining us on this podcast, and hopefully we'll have you on again on another episode in the future.
We'd love to.
Really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
Really enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you. And that's it for this episode of Room Secured. I want to say a big thank you to Gary Harmer from Hikvision and also Lewis Pinner from Verkada. Don't forget to subscribe and follow and like, and also we'll be posting snippets on our LinkedIn channel. Until next time, this has been Room Secured.